So we're looking at part 18 of the essentials, looking at the history and use of essential oils. And just first of all, just a reminder that what we're looking at here is informational, educational in nature. And it's just another additional health tool to put in your tool belt that you can use for wellness or bringing back to health if you're sick. It's not medical advice. And always be encouraged to do your own due diligence anytime anything new comes across your path as far as a health change. It's not exhaustively comprehensive, but have gone into some detail here, and there's certainly more that you could research on your own. So today we're going to look at rosemary. Rosemary officinale. And rosemary is a member of the mint family, interestingly enough. Actually has a very long history of use. And it's useful in settling the nerves. So it's a neurological benefitor, not only in settling the nerves, but also in increasing mental acuity. So memory enhancement, it's been used as a tea for a long period of time for that. It was used ceremonially way back in the 1500s, funerals and weddings as a plant of remembrance, I think is how it's been coined. Which goes into the realm of helping to enhance the neurological brain memory functions. It has some sacred qualities that were ascribed to it by several different cultures, the Egyptians, the Romans, and the Greeks. The Romans actually all three of them used it as an air cleanser to prevent the spread of disease. So that was a beneficial aspect from the aromatic qualities. And that's a lot of what we'll be talking about today is its aromatic qualities as opposed to its culinary qualities, because we're looking at essential oils in particular. So it actually supports the production of BDNF. So BDNF is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So it's a compound that is made by the brain. Neurotrophic, trophy is to build up, neuro is neurons, and it's just something that is made by the brain, especially when it's stimulated, that helps neurological tissue heal. So it can be helpful after strokes or other types of things that have brain damaging effects to help bring back those functions. So the essential oil is made from the leaves. So they kind of look like pine leaves. You can see up there by that bottle. Many people are accustomed to having used rosemary in a culinary sense as a seasoning, but it should be probably used more often than it is. It's in breads and in various roasts and dishes and like that. But if you use it more purposefully and intentfully, it can have effects more than just periodically throughout your life. The key molecules from a chemistry standpoint, 1,8-phenol. You can see that it's kind of interesting twisted molecule there, almost has a has an on-edge ring structure. And then there's linalool and terpene-4-ol. So the OL at the end just tells you that there is a hydroxyl group present. That's the OH that you can see the arrows are pointing at. And so that makes it an alcohol group, and anything that ends with OL from a chemical naming standpoint is an alcohol. Not to say that it has alcohol types of interactions like you would alcohol that people consume, or like ethyl alcohol that's used for cleansing and cleaning. It's just a molecular formula that indicates that that molecule has a hydroxyl group, functional group on it. So the 1,8-phenol doesn't have that. So the 1 and the 8 are referring to the number of carbon that the methyl groups are actually being attached to. So you can see the oxygen there is by itself, and then the first carbon is where the upper methane group is, and then just start counting there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So each point where the chain bends, and you come back to where the 2 methyl groups are right by next to the oxygen, and that's carbon number 8. So that's how they get those terminologies is just a numbering system, and it's the number 1 carbon, and the number 8 carbon that have those functional groups on them. The other ones are just going to have hydrogens. So those are the molecules that have the activity in the rosemary essential oil. So some key properties for the essential oil of rosemary. It has pain-killing qualities, so analgesic. It helps to thin mucus, so it breaks down mucus, and that's one of the things with respiratory issues like for example, cystic fibrosis, or even like emphysema or just some bad colds, you have just this thick mucus that isn't able to be removed well. And so it helps to thin that and can maybe potentially lessen the effects of that. So brain function improvement has some stimulant, mild stimulant effects. Like many oils, it blends well with other essential oils in various uses. So peppermint, so that's the upper right plant there. So the essential oil of peppermint, the essential oil of basil, and the essential oil of lavender are three that are commonly mixed along with rosemary. So it can give it a combination kind of a flavor or scent. So some things to keep in mind from a safety standpoint. You don't want to have someone who's pregnant using it. They don't know exactly what some of the ramifications might be. Not everything's been tested on pregnant and nursing mothers, so just some caution to be used there. People with a history of epilepsy and individuals with elevated blood pressure should take caution in using rosemary. So some specific ways that rosemary essential oil is used. We see it used in respiratory infections, and it's used again as a mucus thinner, and that really can aid just the ability of your body to clear it, as well as make it less, less difficult to cough and clear it yourself. So topically apply it to the chest like you would, say, eucalyptus. You can use it in a similar fashion, or you can also diffuse it aromatically in the room. So some of these things, you may have eucalyptus, so just use eucalyptus, but maybe you don't have eucalyptus. Maybe you just have rosemary. So there are many things that have multiple indications. You can use them in combination, but you don't have to use every single one for the same thing. But that's the beautiful thing about how God's made the plant world, is that there are many things that do similar tasks, and what you have on hand, use. So there's actually some interesting implications for cancer too, using rosemary internally, and that would be the essential oil in capsule form. So remember that essential oils are concentrated chemical compounds. Those oils have been derived from a larger volume, and sometimes, like roses we looked at last week, like 250 roses or more are concentrated into 15 milliliters or less of essential oil. So it's very concentrated. But you'd want to use veggie caps. So there are gel caps, so those can be made from the gelatin of cow hooves, and you want to steer away from anything animal because there could have hitchhikers in that, as opposed to veggie caps, which would be vegetable based. So we'll look at some research here. I thought this was very interesting, how it has some benefits for cancer, and even just using it as a culinary additive, just from the regular plant that you would use like in roasts and things, or as a flavoring in bread and whatnot. Maybe just use it more intentionally. So anti-cancer effects of rosemary extract and rosemary extract polyphenol. So those are like the compounds. So there was some research done back in 2016 in the journal Nutrients. And then in 2015 in Nutrition and Cancer, rosemary extract as a potential complementary agent in anti-cancer therapy. So they were looking basically at using the essential oil of rosemary along with traditional therapies as a synergist, for example. And then in 2014 in the journal Electrophoresis, they looked at the modulation of estrogen and epidermal growth factor receptors by rosemary extract in breast cancer cells. So they were specifically looking at its role in targeting breast cancer, which is a very common cancer. And we just have a family friend who had beat cancer some years ago, went through chemo and all that, and just learned that it's resurged and come back to haunt her, essentially. She pretty much changed her diet and everything, and turned right around. And we think there may be some effects with the injectable therapy that went around, because it seems to have some turbo cancer effects that are being seen. And she did participate in that. So also in 2010, in the Plant Foods and Human Nutrition, we looked at the inhibitory effects of rosemary extracts and carnosic acid and rosmarinic acid. So those are different acids than what we looked at, or molecules that we looked at as being the primarily active ones in essential oil. but also present in those extracts on various different types of human cancer cell lines. So they looked at a broad spectrum of the different types of cancers that can afflict humans and noted their effects. So rosemary is also sees benefit in topical use for hair loss. So you can put it directly on your scalp or other places where you've lost hair that maybe you wish you had hair. I haven't found that to be a particular benefit for me at this point. I've been trying it, but we'll see how that works out. There is a male pattern baldness that runs in families too from a genetic basis. So there's the genetic basis versus the physiological basis just from a nutrient or other type of issue that would cause hair loss. Memory, so topical, you can use it under your nose or directly across the forehead. So being an oil is going to pass through the skin because your skin, all cells are lipid based. They have a lipid bilayer, a fat. They're basically encased in fat. And so oil is going to cross an oil barrier very easily. So there's the fat fraction. So that's one way or one reason that multiple essential oils can cross into and across cellular barriers very easily without having to have specific molecular transporters at the cell membrane to move them in. So you can also use it, diffusing it into the room. And so you're going to take that in through your respiratory tract, and that can benefit memory as well. So Bell's palsy and multiple sclerosis actually also benefit from the use. People who suffer from that topically applying it to the bottom of the feet, and then internally in capsule form can benefit that. Also, those who suffer from mental fatigue, adrenal fatigue, or chronic fatigue, aromatic diffusion can be helpful, especially if it's combined with basil, can help with those areas of fatigue. So chronic fatigue is just kind of a catch-all syndrome that describes fatigue on a broad spectrum, and it's a very frustrating diagnosis. Along with, there's other frustrating diagnoses too. So chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia is another one, because they just kind of, you can't pin them down. They're just really difficult, but they can have multiple components to them. So mental fatigue, how would you get mental fatigue? Just working too hard with your mind, or you could be impairing it with various foods or substances that you're using and not even knowing it. Even some pharmacological drugs can have mental effects. And your adrenal glands, of course, they can be overstimulated just due to a high stress lifestyle and end up not being able to produce epinephrine or norepinephrine at an appropriate rate. So jaundice and liver condition. So jaundice is an outgrowth of a liver condition that's not functioning properly. So use it internally. You know, your liver is a very unique organ. They can pretty much take almost your entire liver out, and your liver will regenerate and regrow into the same space. So it's a regenerative organ. It ebbs and flows with the medications you may be using, because that's one of the reasons for drug tolerance is your liver becomes efficient at removing the toxins. And as it becomes more efficient, it requires more of the painkiller, for example, to do the job, or whatever medication you might be using. And that's the kind of mechanism of drug tolerance, is the efficiency of the liver. But that can be hard on the liver over time too. So nervousness and depression. So that's the neurological effects of benefits. You can aromatically diffuse it into the room. Stiff and tired muscles, along with wintergreen essential oil. So you can apply it to the muscles to help them recover from the fatigue. So it might be good for athletes or even weekend warriors. Cellulite is supposed to be helpful for internal use in a capsule form or aromatically diffused in the room. Fainting. Individuals who have fainted, you can apply that on the skin with geranium essential oil if you have that handy, and can help bring them back to the world again from fainting. So vasovagal syncope, another term for fainting. I remember when I was a kid, we would spend some time in the medical office where my mother worked, and my brother came out one day with his hand, and he held it up and said, "Would you smell my hand?" And I just took a big whiff and just about knocked me out, because he had broken a smelling salt an ammonia selling salt in his hand and had tricked me into smelling his hand. And I wasn't very happy about that. But so it's actually beneficial for diabetes control too. So this spice, this common spice, can have positive effects on helping to mitigate diabetes. So diabetes control, and so internally take it with 1 to 2 drops of water in a glass of water, and over time you can have a benefit in the regulatory hormones that your body provides to mitigate blood sugar changes due to the food that you eat. So you can't ignore the sources of the high glucose, the food. You do have to change, modify your diet, but it can help your body if you have a fatigued, essentially diabetes. There's two different directions what diabetes can come from. It can come from a fatigued pancreas because it's been overstimulated for such a long period of time. And the other angle is that it just gets taxed or it's not functioning appropriately. So the diabetes can be helped and controlled over time with the increased use or using the essential oil and or consistent use of rosemary. So we mentioned analgesic properties of rosemary. So you can reduce pain by topically rubbing rosemary essential oil on sore muscles and joints. So little recipe here, very anti-inflammatory. 2 drops of rosemary, 2 drops of peppermint, and 1 teaspoon of coconut oil. And then just mix that together and then rub it onto the areas of concern. And then it's also helpful in body detoxification. So you can internally take 2 to 3 drops in a capsule or rub it on abdominally. That can help your body detox or transition toxic chemicals out of your body. So it boosts nutrient absorbance and also helps to reverse and prevent toxic overloads of other types of things. So it's actually a very pretty flower. It can get quite large plant. There's one that I've encountered that's like 4 feet tall. It's a very large plant, but many times they come quite a bit smaller. But it's something you can grow year round. It has kind of it's like a pine tree in a way that it's evergreen, and you can use its fresh fronds year round.